That's
all right. Second hour of the show is brought to you by the Burgesson team at Remax by the Lake, everybody. Don't give Adam or Derek a call or shoot them an email at aburgesson, Bergeson, at remax.net for all your commercial real estate needs. And, of course, we are joined by Michael Bratton of That SEC Podcast, or also known as SEC Mike. Also known as the guy who's having a really great week with his team this week and his cousin Shane. Are y'all starting to hydrate again here, Mike?
Yeah,
that big win?
It's funny you say that. I was going to let you guys know I'm still a little hungover from Saturday. So
I imagine so, man. I imagine so.
So, well, Mike, certainly the huge win in Knoxville for Tennessee. And, just watching them right now on both sides of the ball, it's, they're 10th in run defense right now. I think their defensive coaches are doing a great job taking a lot of chances because it doesn't matter. I think, they're run blitzing, they're hitting quarterbacks. They blew up LSU's offense the whole day in Baton Rouge. And I think that's probably a function of their offense just being so good. I mean, because they know they're going to get it back and score. Hooker's extremely accurate. I mean, probably one of the more accurate quarterbacks I've seen. Doing all this without Cedric Tillman, it seems like they have a starter that goes out on defense every week. Yet Tennessee's kind of the talk of college football right now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that, what you hear out of that building is confidence. That's the key word. And it's not just, like you said, with the offense when they got the ball, confidence that they're going to score, but it's 16 seconds left in the game. You got to go 40, 45 yards to get in manageable field goal range. No hesitation. Go for two when you need to. No hesitation. Josh Heupel, even late in that game, they came up short on a couple fourth downs, but it wasn't, that's the end of the game. We'll just go right back next time. And there's a danger to doing that, obviously, that cracked the door open for Alabama to come back and potentially win the game had their kicker been able to make a field goal. But that's the way Tennessee's got to play when they're playing a team like Alabama and when they play Georgia here in a couple weeks. You cannot be conservative in college football. That's why Will Muschamp ain't a coach anymore. I don't want to bring up bad memories, but guys like that will just never succeed unless they've got Georgia's talent to work with. So, Josh Heupel, credit him. He should be SEC Coach of the Year up to this point. And I think even if they drop a game in Athens, he should still be SEC Coach of the Year. I'm a Tennessee grad, and I didn't see this run coming.
Mike Bratton, That SEC Podcast. So we have to check in on Cousin Shane, obviously, specifically, and ask how he's doing. I know he's a legend. I know he doesn't do any outside media, but your podcast, and that's fine. But we do care about Cousin Shane here and want to make sure he is not only alive, but thriving and happy. And he's not somewhere in Knoxville passed out, next to a broken down tailgate or something.
No, quite the opposite, JC. He made a vow leading up to that game. He said if Tennessee does the unthinkable, beats Alabama, he's going to start exercising again. So if he's not working, he's not recording the podcast, he's out there hitting the trails. He's been walking an hour a day to get into shape. Tennessee did their part, so he's doing it for them.
Awesome.
That man, he was on another level. I've never seen anything quite like it. If anybody missed it on our YouTube channel, we've got a live video of Cousin Shane for about 8 minutes. He dropped about 20 F-bombs, but he apologized for every one of them. He was elated.
I loved it. Yeah, I laughed my ass off listening to that the other day. That immediate reaction to the win. Although I will take some umbrage with what Cousin Shane said on the pod yesterday, Mike, and that he feels like A&M is going to win out this year. And we feel like we're going to step on him this weekend. Yeah, he is. All year he has been. Of course, he's got to back up that, first in the West prediction from SEC Media Days.
I think that's where he's coming from right there. Because, based on what I've seen from A&M, man, I don't know. They play UMass. I'll give them UMass. But that may be the only guaranteed win I give them on their schedule.
Mm-hmm.
They played South Carolina this weekend, 7:30 p.m. kickoff in Columbia, night game. Their offensive line, we had an A&M insider on earlier this week. It's banged up. They don't know who's going to play quarterback. Offense has been very pedestrian this year. They're 115th in run defense. I think scoring defense are pretty good, and obviously South Carolina can't turn it over like Alabama did 4 times against the Aggies in this one Saturday night, but it does look like this is a game South Carolina, if they go out there and continue to play like they did against Kentucky on both sides, especially the second half on offense, I think South Carolina could snap the streak and win the Bonham Trophy. Did you know there was a trophy for this game, SEC Mike?
I did, yeah. We were trying to figure out who in the heck is that, the drummer from Led Zeppelin. We don't know.
John Bonham Trophy.
We didn't understand the origins of it, but that is something that we've discussed before. But yeah, pedestrian, that's the kindest thing you could say about A&M this season. I mean, I had Paul Feinbaum cracking up. I got to talk to him leading up to that Tennessee-Alabama game. I said, the best win Jimbo's going to get this year is a 4-point loss to Alabama. And, I mean, that sums it up for the $95 million man. How about you talk about their defense, 14th in scoring offense in the SEC, 12th in passing efficiency, 12th in rushing, 14th in scoring touchdowns. I mean, they're just god-awful. And that's his baby. That's his side of the ball. There's no more excuses. This is year 5. This is his roster. These are his quarterbacks. I was rolling when he said, well, Haynes King, he's our backup, and he's giving us all this glory against Alabama. Well, that's not your backup. That's a guy you've been rolling with for 2 years that you've anointed as the next Johnny Manziel. So, yeah, I mean, this is a must win for Jimbo and A&M if they're going to have, even an 8-4 record at this point in time, which is not the standard for the roster that they have. And I've been told, JC, I don't know if you're hearing anything quite like this, but if A&M loses to South Carolina, with all due respect, they don't have business losing to South Carolina with the roster they have. But the way they're playing, I think certainly South Carolina can do it. But if A&M loses this game, I've been told it's going to start the wheels in motion to get Jimbo out of there. Wow. Now, I'm not saying they're going to fire him on Sunday or anything, but I think, as it was relayed to me, that means they're going to start going around and seeing, who's willing to contribute to get this guy out of here, because I mean, it's borderline a disaster there.
It has not been pretty, and I think that when we talked to Tarpley earlier this week, though, he focused a lot on the injuries. And Jimbo said something interesting, and I kind of thought about this too with regards to their run D. And like I said, look, statistically, they're not good against the run. I mean, even Mississippi State ran for 161 on them. But they are teams aren't scoring a whole lot on A&M either. So I guess that's kind of the name of the game. But Jimbo was talking earlier this week about his run defense, and they recruited a lot of 5-star talent up front on defense, but it's still young. And he said it's not really athletics. He said these guys, they're young, so they make mistakes. They in other words, they don't do the gap control, that kind of thing, and that's made them susceptible. So do you think that in College Station, I guess based on what you're hearing, the answer is probably no. But that, maybe it'll be kind of a mulligan this year. I mean, I think you make great points about it being year 5. I think you make great points about Haynes King because, Haynes was starting last year before he got hurt, so he's been Jimbo's guy for a couple of years. But so the other mitigating circumstances with A&M, you think their people are just going to be like, look, this is unacceptable. It's not working. We're moving on.
Well, I think it all depends on the dealings behind the scenes, who's ready to contribute, who can they get to come in there. But yeah, I mean, it depends on who you ask. Cause I mean, some people, they'll just die on the sword for Jimbo, and I just don't get it. And it's nothing personal, but I mean, he had that one great year at Florida State. And I mean, if you follow the trajectory of that program, that's exactly what's happening at A&M right now. Offense is an issue. Offensive line is an issue. Quarterback is an issue. And like you said, defense, their scoring defense is pretty good. Defense has only been the only thing holding that program together for years. Mike Elko left. Now, of course, the Duke head coach, DJ Dirk, can come in there. He's doing a good job. Like you said, there's a lot of young talent. That young talent started to emerge a lot more against Alabama. They were making plays. If that trend continues, yes, maybe A&M can finish really strong. They should beat just about everybody on their schedule. I just don't have confidence for them to do it. So, if they win out, if they go, I think they got 5 games left. If they go 4-1, I think they'll be he'll certainly be back. But if they lose to South Carolina again, I just don't think they've got any excuse. A team they've never lost to as an SEC opponent. That doesn't mean South Carolina's horrible. I mean, they're sitting here at 4-2, one of the best stories in the SEC. But how many players on South Carolina's roster would Jimbo take over someone on his? I mean, it's got to be a handful at most. So they should win this football game. But no, it wouldn't surprise me if they say, maybe next year we got all this young talent. We got this we're going to hear all off season, JC, how great Connor Wigman is. And I hope he is. I got nothing against him. He'll be about the fifth Johnny Manziel they've had down there at College Station.
Wow. That's awesome. All right. So some other games around the league. Mike, Ole Miss, LSU, intriguing. Les Miles used to say Death Valley in Baton Rouge is where dreams went to die. Ole Miss has some dreams. They're 7-0. I don't know how good they are. To me, this Ole Miss team's not as good as last year's Ole Miss team. I think they're much better on defense than they have been under Kiffin. But, but they keep winning. Held off Auburn the other week. And going down there to Baton Rouge is no picnic. But LSU's a 2-point favorite right now. How do you see this one working? I thought a huge win for LSU last week in the Swamp.
Yeah, and I get that. It's a complete toss-up in my opinion. Home field, obviously, you got to give LSU a little bit of an edge, but it wasn't much of a home field advantage when Tennessee rolled in there. So I think that might be a little overrated as long as it's not a night game there in Death Valley. It's a
day game,
2:30 kickoff down there. So, I'm kind of leaning Ole Miss, but again, it would not surprise me either way. I think we live in a world, JC, where we just overreact to what happened last week. And yes, that was a great win. LSU came out 6 straight drives, scored a touchdown to open the game. If they can carry that over, they will beat Ole Miss. But this is an LSU team that's been up and down all season. They got 2 freshman offensive tackles. That hasn't really killed them. It hurt them against Tennessee. One of the tackles was out. That's what really killed LSU going into that matchup, just the lack of continuity on that offensive line. But Jaden Daniels, I think he scored 6 touchdowns in the last game. He's incredible. He is the offense. I think he's got like 85% of their total offensive production. So he may be. I'm not saying he's the best player in the SEC, but I think he's the most valuable to his team. Based on you take him off the team, I don't know where LSU would be, but I don't know. Ole Miss keeps getting the disrespect card, and I think they can play it for another week. That their running game is elite. I think they'll be able to run the ball on LSU. Florida ran for over 200 yards on LSU. If Ole Miss can have that type of production, as long as they don't need Jackson Dart to win them the football game, I think they can do it. So I'm kind of leaning towards Ole Miss on that one.
Trouble in Tuscaloosa. I saw Nick Saban's press conference this week. I mentioned it earlier, Mike. Didn't look like himself. Looked agitated, nervous, upset, worried, concerned. I don't know. We've seen him in situations like this before come out and just roll people, right? Alabama's a 21-point favorite. Mississippi State's taking that drive over from Starkville where you lose cell phone service for like an hour and then you kind of feel like you're in a time warp. But they're coming over to play the Tide. I actually don't think people understand how close those two schools are, driving wise. But
it's the closest proximity of any SEC programs.
Yeah, because you get to Starkville a lot. If you're coming from like Atlanta, it's usually good to just go to Tuscaloosa, and then at some point you take a left and keep going. And like I said, you go through the time warp and you're in Mississippi. But that's the deal there. But your thoughts on this game? 2 disappointing performances last week was, I don't know whether to think Kentucky just got back up off the mat and played their game and won, or whether that's the Mike Leach game that every year you kind of scratch your head and how the hell they lose that one, or what. I think Phil and I were both really bullish on the Bulldogs, no pun intended. But now, they're looking at dropping to 2-3 if they don't go into Tuscaloosa and pull an upset. And, this one's pretty interesting to me as well in terms of which program or which school, which team will respond.
Yeah. Well, and I actually predicted that one, JC. I predicted Kentucky to win, believe it or not. I just thought, with their backs against the wall, they lose that game to Mississippi State, their season's done. Mm-hmm. And I think they have more heart, more toughness than that, even though they quit at the end of South Carolina. I hate to call it what it is. I mean, they basically quit without Will Levis. So, not to toot my own horn, because heck, I'm right there with you. I thought Mississippi State this was going to be a dream season potentially for them. They blew it in the fourth quarter against LSU. Just got run off the field. They blew it against Kentucky. They should have won that football game. And man, Alabama has really had Mike Leach's number. But now, of course, the talent discrepancy is massive between those two. But I'm right there with you. I've been saying it for a while. I don't know Nick Saban. I mean, his defense, I thought he was this defensive genius. Every time he goes up against a high-powered offense, they can't stop it. Whether it's LSU, whether it's A&M, whether it's Clemson, now Tennessee. Oh, Lane Kiffin's had a ton of success. I mean, this is not like a 1 or 2 year thing. This is going back 4 or 5 years. Remember when Clemson scored, what was it, 40 something points on them in the national championship game?
Yeah, I remember that one.
So I mean, it's just, I don't know. And now we've got the NIL, which he hates, the transfer portal that he hates. It certainly seems like Nick Saban is. I don't know. He's starting to look his age. I mean, his hair looks more red every year. What I don't know what dye he's using, but you think it'd be something better than what he's actually using. So I do anticipate them, of course, to beat Mississippi State. It'd be kind of crazy to sit here and say otherwise. But if Mississippi State plays up to their standard, I think they can play with this Alabama team. I think Alabama may be a little overrated. There's still a top 5 team in the country. But remember, coming into the year, we all thought, oh, this is the revenge tour. They're just going to tear through the SEC. They're going to kill everybody. They probably should have lost to Texas. Could have lost to A&M, who we just tore to shreds a moment ago. Did lose to Tennessee. They've got road trips at Ole Miss, at LSU. I'm not convinced Alabama's going to not have another loss by the end of the season. So, yeah, like you said, very, very interesting game here. I got to imagine Nick Saban's putting them through the ringer this week in Tuscaloosa in practice.
Absolutely. So that's the deal there. I think they're practicing pretty hard this week and all that. Yeah, Alabama defense. Obviously it's a proven system and it's worked nicely for them over the years. They've had some great defenses, but one thing about that system is it will bust sometimes in the secondary. It's complex, probably a little bit more complex. And you've seen it at Tennessee, and we've seen it at South Carolina, and you see it at Georgia now too. It's kind of the same system. And there are some of the same problems with that. Certainly not questioning Nick Saban as a defensive coach at all. I'm just saying, that's kind of what I see as some of these issues where, teams are allowed to kind of find the spots down the field against the secondary. Vandy and Missouri, I think Vandy thinks maybe this is a chance for them to break the losing streak. I've thought Vandy, has shown some good signs this year, especially on offense. Missouri's had just a brutally tough, gut-wrenching start. I kind of think the Tigers will get right this game and win it heading into South Carolina the next weekend. But your take on Vandy, Missouri?
Well, before I address that, I want to go back to what you just said about that Saban defense and the complexity. Do you guys remember Tennessee, BYU? It was like 2-3 years ago where Tennessee they were winning the entire game, yet BYU got the ball back with like 20 seconds. They had to go the length of the field. They were down 1 or 2 points, and it was 3rd and 15, and they gave up like an 82-yard play. BYU kicks a field goal and wins. And in the postgame, they asked Jeremy Pruitt, who runs that Alabama defense. They said, what play did you call there? He said, I called the one that doesn't give up 80 yards on 3rd and 15. So, yeah, I have lived the complexity of that Alabama defense in my life for sure. But, yeah, Missouri, Vanderbilt, man.
Somebody's going to win one, Mike.
Right. Both of them winless in the SEC. I actually think Missouri's a little bit better than people give them credit for. They have lost 3 straight games by 1 score, and that's the first time going back to the 1950s that has happened to this Missouri program. So they are just on a terrible, unfortunate streak right now. They've had 2 weeks to prepare. Their defense has done a complete 180. The offense now is the issue, which that's bad news for Drinkwitz because he's supposed to be an offensive guy here. If they lose this game, I'm never one of these guys. We got to fire this coach. I'm always a little too patient. I like to give guys time and get their players in there, and I just think that's an incredibly difficult job. But not even I could defend Drink if Missouri loses this football game with 2 weeks to prepare. Vanderbilt they are sneaky good on offense. They have some nice pieces. A.J. Swan, true freshman quarterback, he is one of 2 quarterbacks in all of college football, JC, that on a minimum of 100 attempts that has not thrown an interception. That's very impressive. He was key in winning that game at Northern Illinois, which Northern Illinois, I believe, was like an 8, 9, 10-point favorite. So Vanderbilt has got some explosive receivers. Their running back is top 5 in the SEC in rushing, I believe. So they should be able to score on Missouri. But it's going to be paramount that Missouri can score back. They're getting back Luther Burden, Dominique Lovett. So must win for Drink and Company. I think Missouri gets it done. But this, I would not be stunned if Vanderbilt, this is a ball game in the fourth quarter. And if it is, it's going to be bad news for old Drink.
I'm kind of a bit surprised about the hot seat talk with him, but they only gave Barry Odom 4 years, and the hiring process when they landed on Drinkwitz was interesting because the AD that was there at the time had 3 other guys, including Skip Holtz and Willie Fritz. I think were on that list, and then all of a sudden they went and got Drink, and I don't know that he's done. He had a pretty good first year. Last year was a little bit iffy. They did sneak into a bowl, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, you're right. I think the knives are going to be out in Como if they don't beat the Vanderbilt Commodores this weekend. We were talking earlier about game day coming to South Carolina for Tennessee, South Carolina. Looking at the schedule that week, guys, Georgia at Kentucky is one that jumps out. Miami, Clemson. USC, UCLA that weekend may end up being the ticket out west for game day. Also Bedlam, but Oklahoma's not all that good this year. So hey, that could happen. Gamecocks win out. Tennessee keeps winning. Game day could come to Columbia that weekend. The weekend that used to be known as Sun Belt Saturday, and now it's only half Sun Belt Saturday. So Michael, so I'm guessing you're going to pick A&M to get back on track and win the game this weekend, or against Carolina, or kind of what your final thoughts on the Gamecocks and Aggies?
Yeah, well, my favorite bet's going to be the under because I don't know how many points is going to be scored in this ball game, but yeah, I will be picking A&M to win, but. That's more of a put my faith in the roster than anything else because I got zero faith in this coaching staff. So I know they looked pretty good against Alabama. Again, that was a backup quarterback who kept turning the ball over. Alabama did their best to keep A&M in that ball game. They missed multiple field goals, 4 turnovers. You should win a football game if the opponent's doing that. Yet A&M couldn't even do that. So
they're right there on the 1 yard line, scaring the heck out of everybody. But yeah, they couldn't get it done.
Pulling a play call out of a hat.
But like I said, there were some young players that emerged, particularly Evan Stewart, that true freshman receiver for A&M. He's going to be a future star. Devon Awchain, very, very dangerous player. If not for him, A&M, I don't know where they'd be on offense.
If AJ is not good, they're not. Yeah,
exactly. So that's key to the game. Can we get Spencer Rattler going? Can we get Jaheim the ball? That's going to be key. I mean, I don't know what in the hell we're doing there. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse. We got to get the passing game going. If South Carolina can do that, they're going to be in this ball game because Marshawn Lloyd's playing the best football he's ever played, and he should have a nice day here against Texas A&M's poor run defense.
Absolutely, Michael. It's always a pleasure when you jump on with us, man. We really appreciate it, and hope this great SEC football season continues for you, man. And everybody, I think, in Gamecock land that's listened to your show thinks you do great work. I mean, there's all kinds of praise for you here in the Nana's Porch chat box. So that's usually a sign that we had a pretty good segment, right?
Hey, I appreciate the praise, JC. You're one of the best in the SEC. So anytime you and Phil need me, I'm happy to join you. It's always a pleasure.